You're alone in your kitchen. You drop a spoon. And out loud to absolutely no one, you say, okay, pick it up. You didn't decide to say that, it just happened. But the real answer for why you did it is far stranger than you think. Your brain has been narrating your life since before you could read. It never stopped. It just got quieter. Think about the last time you lost your keys. Did you mutter, "Where did I put you?" under your breath? Most people do. Nearly everyone has done this and felt slightly embarrassed about it afterward, as if talking to yourself is a small failure of adulthood. It isn't. It's one of the oldest tools your mind has, and it's older than you are by a very long way. Here's where the story actually begins, and it doesn't begin with adults at all. It begins with toddlers narrating everything they touch, every single day, without a hint of self-consciousness. Watch any 3-year-old build a tower of blocks. This one goes here. No, not there. Here. They're not performing for you. They're barely aware you exist. A Soviet psychologist named Lev Vygotsky noticed this pattern almost a century ago and gave it a name: private speech. He proposed something radical for his time. Talking to yourself wasn't a symptom of confusion. It was a stage of thinking itself, an intermediate step between raw impulse and organized action. Vygotsky's idea was simple, but it flipped the science of childhood on its head. Children first learn language to communicate outward, to parents, to siblings, to anyone who will listen. But somewhere along the way, that same tool turns inward. The child starts using words not to talk to others, but to talk to themselves, and through that self-talk, to organize their own thoughts. Why would a growing brain need to hear its own voice to think clearly? Because thought, in its raw form, is fast, messy, and half-formed. It arrives as a flicker, not a sentence. Language slows that flicker down. It forces a vague impulse into a sentence with a beginning and an end. And a sentence, unlike a flash of feeling, can be examined, corrected, repeated, even argued with. So the child says, "Here, not there," out loud, and in saying it, actually figures out where the block goes. The words aren't describing the thinking. The words are the thinking, happening in real time, stitched together one syllable at a time. Eventually, most children stop saying these things out loud in front of other people. Society trains that behavior out of us pretty efficiently, usually somewhere around age 7, right when classrooms start rewarding quiet concentration over audible narration. But the internal habit never actually disappears. It just goes underground, folding inward into what you now experience as your inner monologue. The endless voice narrating your day inside your own skull, commenting on traffic, rehearsing arguments you'll never have, replaying conversations from 3 days ago. Here's the twist almost nobody expects. That inward folding was never complete. Decades after Vygotsky, an American developmental psychologist named Adam Winsler ran a series of studies tracking private speech across childhood and into adulthood. What he found was that private speech doesn't vanish at 7 or 8, the way earlier theories assumed. It just becomes selective. It resurfaces exactly when your brain is under the most strain. Difficult tasks, high-stakes moments, unfamiliar problems. That's when the inner voice pushes back out, breaking through your lips as barely audible mutters or full sentences spoken to an empty room, or occasionally a sharp word directed at a printer that has jammed for the 3rd time in a row. Which explains something you've probably noticed but never questioned. Why do you talk to yourself more when you're stressed, not less? It isn't a breakdown. It's a tool being redeployed. Under pressure, your brain reaches for the oldest, most reliable trick it has for organizing thought, turning it into speech the way a 3-year-old does with wooden blocks, the way you did once and simply forgot. Think about how many places this shows up once you actually start looking for it. You talk to your GPS when it sends you the wrong way. You argue quietly with a referee on television who will never hear you. You coach yourself through parallel parking. Narrating the wheel turns out loud even though you've parked 1,000 times before. You whisper, don't drop it," while carrying too many grocery bags up a flight of stairs. None of these moments feel connected, but they're the exact same mechanism firing again and again. dressed up in 100 different daily disguises. There's evidence this trick actually works, and it comes from a much stranger direction than childhood memories. A cognitive psychologist named Gary Lupien ran an experiment where people had to find an object hidden among a cluttered array of images, something like spotting a banana among dozens of unrelated items. One group searched in silence. The other group said the object's name out loud while searching, repeating it quietly to themselves. Banana, banana, banana. The people who spoke the word out loud found the object faster, consistently, across repeated trials. Saying a word doesn't just express a thought you've already had. It sharpens the thought. Speaking the name of what you're looking for seems to prime your visual system to actually notice it, as if the sound reaches back and adjusts what your eyes are willing to see, tuning your attention like a radio dial nudged toward one exact frequency. So when you mutter keys, keys, keys while patting down your pockets, you're not being scatterbrained. You are running the exact same cognitive trick a toddler runs with wooden blocks and a search participant runs with a hidden banana. You're using your own voice to focus a mind that would otherwise drift toward a dozen other half-finished thoughts. There's a deeper layer to this too, one that reaches into how your brain literally files away information and decides what deserves attention. A British psychologist named Charles Fernyhough spent years studying what he calls the voices within, the internal dialogue that runs almost continuously beneath your conscious awareness. His research suggests your inner voice isn't one single thing. It's closer to a conversation, sometimes even an argument, between different parts of your own mind. One part proposes, another part critiques, a third part decides. All of this happens in a fraction of a second, and almost none of it reaches your conscious attention unless something forces it outward, like frustration, or a dropped spoon on a kitchen floor, or a deadline sitting 3 hours away. That's the missing piece. Out loud self-talk isn't random overflow. It's the rare moment when your internal committee meeting becomes audible, when the debate happening silently behind your eyes spills out through your mouth because the stakes just got high enough to demand it. Brain imaging studies looking at inner speech have found something else worth pausing on. When people are asked to silently talk to themselves inside an fMRI scanner, the same regions responsible for actually producing spoken language light up, areas like Broca's area, normally associated with moving your mouth and shaping sound. Your brain barely distinguishes between the sentence you say out loud and the sentence you only think. It uses nearly identical machinery for both. Which means the moment when a thought crosses from silent to spoken isn't some dramatic shift into a different mental process. It's a small threshold being crossed, a volume knob turned up by just enough for your own ears to catch it. That helps explain why certain situations reliably push you past that threshold. Fine motor tasks, physical coordination under time pressure, anything where your hands need instructions faster than your conscious mind can fully process them. Tying a fishing lure, threading a needle, backing a trailer into a tight driveway. These are exactly the moments people report talking to themselves the most, because the hands need the verbal instructions almost as much as the mind does. Now, think back to the spoon. Okay, pick it up. 4 words. Nothing profound. But inside those 4 words is the entire mechanism this video has been building toward. A minor problem appeared. Your brain, following a script written by a Russian psychologist studying children 100 years before you were born, converted a flicker of frustration into language. The language organized the impulse. The impulse became an action. You bent down and picked up the spoon, and within seconds, you'd already forgotten you'd said anything at all. There's a reason this keeps happening specifically when you're alone. Researchers studying self-talk have found people report saying things out loud when they believe no one is listening far more often than they'd ever admit in a survey handed to them about their own habits. Privacy removes the social cost. Nobody's there to think you're strange, so the ancient tool comes back out into the open air, exactly the way it did when you were 4 years old, stacking blocks with nobody watching either, narrating every move without a shred of embarrassment. Which means the thing you've been quietly embarrassed about your whole adult life is, if anything, evidence that your mind is working correctly. Silence would be the strange outcome. A brain that never talks to itself out loud under pressure is a brain that has stopped using one of its oldest and most efficient tools, not a brain that has simply matured past the need for it. Athletes know this, even if they've never read a page of developmental psychology. Watch a weightlifter before a heavy set, muttering a single word to themselves under their breath. Watch a golfer whispering instructions before a swing, or a tennis player scolding themselves after a missed shot, then resetting with a short phrase repeated twice. Coaches now train this deliberately, calling it self-talk coaching, teaching people to consciously narrate difficult moments out loud because the data keeps showing it works, shaving fractions of a second off reaction time and steadying hands that would otherwise shake. What started as a toddler's accidental strategy for stacking blocks has become a formalized performance technique used at the highest levels of competition, all resting on the same underlying mechanism. Vygotsky first described from a classroom full of children nobody thought were saying anything important. There's an odd comfort hidden inside all of this if you sit with it long enough. Every mutter, every muttered curse at a stubborn jar lid. Every quiet, come on, whispered at a car that won't start, connects you backward through nearly a century of psychology, and further back than that, into the earliest years of your own life, before you had any language for why you did the things you did. It also connects you sideways, to everyone around you doing the exact same thing behind closed doors, in empty offices, in parked cars, in kitchens just like yours. Almost nobody talks about this habit openly, and almost everybody has it. That contradiction alone tells you something. A behavior this common, this quietly universal, was never a personal quirk to begin with. It was simply never advertised, because nobody realized it was worth mentioning. So the next time you catch yourself narrating a task to an empty room, negotiating with a stubborn jar lid, or muttering directions to your own car keys, you're not slipping. You're not losing your grip on adulthood. You are reaching for the same tool a 3-year-old reaches for without hesitation, a tool that quietly worked its way into every corner of how your species learned to think, refined across generations, still running quietly in the background of a Tuesday afternoon. You're alone in your kitchen. You drop a spoon. You say, okay, pick it up. And this time you know exactly what's happening. That isn't a strange little slip. That's your mind doing precisely what minds have always done, out loud, for anyone patient enough to listen.